sing hallelujah, says the psalm. Oh, sing hallelujah, all praise be to the one, to the high heavens, to the sun, the moon, and the stars, to the mother and father and sovereign of mercies, as we wish to be quit of all wars, to the father and mother and source of all mercies, who inscribes us in the book of life. Yes, let us be inscribed in the book of life as we enter into worship this day.
Oh, sing hallelujah. Oh, sing hallelujah. Our Father and Mother and Sovereign of mercies, wish to be quit of all war.
By trumpet, harp, and lute, with cymbals and strings and flute, with dancing, sing, and music we praise you, sing hallelujah.
Please join me in the responsive reading. This is indeed a day which the Lord hath made. Rejoice in it, and be glad, and let us count our many blessings. Let us be grateful for the capacity to see, feel, hear, and understand. And let us be especially grateful for the ties of love which bind us together. Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Good morning to you all. My name is Paul Arnold, and I have been coming to Fountain Street for the last 35 years. But interestingly enough, 35 years before that, my father changed his name. So I should be up here saying that my name is Paul Aronovitz. But my father felt the sting of anti-Semitism when he was mustering out of the Army in World War II, so he changed his name from Aronovitz to Arnold. He had a business to run, and he felt that that was the best thing for his family. But that anti-Semitism is something that I don't feel that much today, but if my name happened to be Mohammed or Tyrese or Jesus, I think maybe today I might be a little worried. I threatened to change my name back several times, but my wife said, I changed my name once for you, I'm not changing it again. So back when I was growing up, my father would take us to the synagogue on Saturdays so I could learn how to be among the race of the Hebrews. And then on Sunday, he would take us to the Unitarian Church so I could understand what it's like to be in the human race. When we first met to when we first came to Grand Rapids in 1980, we were looking around for a Unitarian church, and the only one that we saw was a little group of not very many people, and that wasn't of interest to me. And someone said, well, how about Fountain Street Church? It's almost like a Unitarian church. So that leads me to the discussion that right after our services at 12:30, we're going to be having a forum in the chapel where we're going to be talking about whether Fountain Street ought to be looking at that as a possibility. We're also going to be talking about the issues of the homelessness, our neighbors who use our portico, and we'd like to develop a policy at the church to deal with that sort of thing, but that policy needs to come from a conversation with you, the congregation. So we start that conversation today at 12:30 in the chapel.
they say liberals don't pray. That was a lovely text, sung with all the intent the text had to offer. Thank you, choir and music director. Oh, my. I was privileged to know the composer of that, or the setter of that tune, Leo Collins, who also appears in our hymn book. You should know the neighborhood from which your music comes. Readings and lessons are places where we pause to let the wisdom of the world come in with intentionality, not on a bus sign or by accident. And while it isn't technically a lesson, I want you always to take note of the quote at the top, which says something worth taking home, something that should live in your heart. I'm talking about the preamble to the Constitution these September and October, and I'm talking about the common defense. You can see the ironic title already. And I want you to note that General Smedley Butler wrote, "There are only two things we should fight for. One is for the defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights." Let's hold that up against other choices that have been made. The other thing I've mentioned already today is that it's the time of the high holy days, the time of atonement and reconciliation in the Jewish tradition. And in that period, these words of hope, come out of the prophet Isaiah, in which God is speaking through Isaiah to a discouraged people, and says, in part, this is God speaking now, not me, although would that it were. "For my plans are not your plans, nor are my ways your ways, declares the Holy One. But as the heavens are high above the earth, so are my ways high above your ways, and my plans above your plans. For as the rain or snow drops from heaven and returns not there, but soaks the earth and makes it bring forth vegetation, yielding seed for sowing and bread for eating, so is the word that issues from my mouth. It does not come back to me unfulfilled, but performs what I purpose, achieves what I sent it to do. Yea, you shall leave in joy and be led home secure. Before you the mountains and the hills will shout aloud, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands." Is there a more thrilling image than that? I try all this season, in what I call a year of living by heart, to recite something I have memorized. Now, I'm struggling this week as I came to it of late, because it didn't dawn on me until Wednesday what I should memorize. And that was after only 3 days ago, and I've been busy. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? On the shore dimly seen through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in grim silence reposes, what is that which the breeze or the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, half conceals, half disposes? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream. 'Tis the star-spangled banner. Oh, long may it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And where is that band that so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the confusion of battle, a home and a country, would leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps, pollution. No refuge could save the hireling or slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner, oh, long doth it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and truth, may their heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, if our cause it is just. And this be our motto: in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner, oh, in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Powerful, difficult, strugglesome words, which you will hear more about later. Oh, Paul, I really loved your words, but you can do this here. It's not a sin. You can do this here, namaste, commonly done in India. You can do this here, you can do this here, you can do this here. The most important and the most troubling part of worship for liberals is prayer. First of all, who are we praying to? We don't know. We may hope, but more than likely our hope is tinged with maybe not. And what for if we could? To win the lottery? No. For world peace? Well, we've been working on that. More often it is to get to the end of the day in the same number of pieces we started it. To find some passage of serenity somewhere, even in this hour. To be fully present in the world. But in the end, all prayers are petitions. We ask ourselves, what is it that I bring today to this altar of hope and promise? What gift do I bring? With that in mind, we turn our hearts to prayer. I come tired today, spending too much time yesterday in things that were lovely but probably not profitable. Perhaps you come tired too of burdens you have had to bear or sorrows you have rarely expressed. Perhaps you come frightened that something in your life or in your world is a threat or feels like one. Perhaps you come with genuine hope because something has happened that gave you confidence. Perhaps you have come with gratitude that something unbidden has enriched your life. Whatever it is that has brought you here, it is a gift upon the altar of the Spirit. For even our sorrows and our fears, our regrets and shames, our failings, as well as our victories and virtues, are pieces in the stained glass window of truth, through which the light refracts and bends and falls upon all of us in the glory of color that makes beauty, truth, and justice possible tomorrow. And so in the silence, we lift up whatever is upon our hearts today and say, how shall I make this a gift? How shall I make this a prism of the possible for others to see? And may our prayers also be for those whose lives came to their end at this time in years past, for their spirits still dwell among us and propel us in hope and faith through our own lives. We lift up the names of Bob Boy and Marilyn Charnetsky and Stephanie Meyer and Melvin Jones and Rex Francis, Gladys Brooks and Jim Maguki. Thou who art filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens heights, El Malei Rachamim, Shokim Bim Romim, bring true rest beneath the wings of your Shekinah, your presence, to the souls of our beloved who went to their eternal rest. May the one who is the source of mercy shelter them beneath your wings eternally, and bind their souls to us, the living, that they may rest in peace, that we may be at peace. And let us say, Amen. What's particularly lovely about that piece, besides it being a great tune that we sing, and I enjoy the text in my mind whenever I hear it, what's particularly lovely, in addition to the people who spent the time, you have to watch them because they only have these one or two notes, and they have to remember exactly when to put them to make the melody just right. What's lovely is how it reminds us that virtually any sound approached with care and reverence can be part of a song, whether it's a voice or a bell. The great minimalist composer Steve Reich is famous for a piece called clapping music, literally two people clapping in rhythm. And you think that's not music, and then you hear it and you say, yeah, that's music. It's the togetherness of the sounds, the unity of the sound as though it were meant to be together, not arbitrary or accidental, but whole and clear and true. There is the music. I want you to appreciate that because my sermons have been anything but beautiful or charming or uplifting or joyful. They've been rather earnest and sometimes grim. You love it, don't you? No, you don't. But you appreciate the fact that sometimes you need to talk about the difficulties we face as a people and as a nation if we are to move forward as a people or a nation. And glossing it over and making formulas that make it all look like it's all worked out or understood, well, they ring hollow and false. So I'm going to start with an assortment of words that sets up where I'm going today. Doughboy, grunt, leatherneck, swabby, gremlin, snafu, foobar, whiskey, tango, foxtrot. You understand me, don't you? But these are all part of a larger body of language that might be called military slang, most of which cannot be uttered in public, and most of which describes the reality of being in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, or the Marines, which is to say, a little messed up, a lot messed up. And yet, for those same people, those same soldiers, grunts, swabbies, leathernecks, those years they spend in uniform become some of the most vivid parts of their lives. They carry them with pride and with nostalgia and with sadness and with glory through the rest of their lives, despite all the follies and foibles that all those words indicate. Back in 2002, Christopher Hedges wrote a book I've been meaning to read, and I couldn't read it for this week, but I could read portions from it. It's a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, in which he writes, even with its destruction and carnage, war can give us what we long for in life. It can give us purpose, meaning, and a reason for living. Mercy. What does he possibly mean? You'll hear more from him later. But I want you to hear for a moment that perhaps the reason we fight wars is not always political. It goes deeper in ways that we fail to announce to ourselves. Now, before I go any further, I need to make two quick points. First, I did not serve. Most of us did not serve. Only 7.5% of Americans have ever served in military service, and only 0.5% are serving right now. Second point, I am not talking about the military per se, but about their role in our nation, which is to provide for the common defense. Of all the clauses in the preamble to the Constitution, this one seems the most clear. We debate and can and should the nature of justice. We disagree on what constitutes domestic tranquility. We are certainly divided about the general welfare, but we know what providing for the common defense is, don't we? Or maybe not. My goal in this series that encompasses the weeks leading up to the election is to name the issues that we should be talking about but are not being talked about. What we hear from the candidates rarely raises these deeper questions. In this case, what comprises the common defense? We could agree, I think, that it means defending against invasion. That's what was happening when Francis Scott Key wrote that song that you heard me recite. The British had invaded the United States during the War of 1812. They had already burnt Washington substantially to the ground and were sailing on Baltimore to do the same. And the Battle of Fort McHenry was one of pure defense. It wouldn't surrender. It didn't surrender, signified by the flag never being pulled down, because that was the sign of surrender, to drop your colors. It never went away. In fact, the flag was so battered that there are holes in it on display at the Smithsonian. It is a symbol of our capacity to withstand an assault and invasion. Now, Key's song celebrates the defense in prose that is rather more purple than we prefer today, with terms like haughty hosts and things like their blood has washed out their foul footsteps pollution. We don't talk like that. We don't sing like that anymore. But unlike almost every other military action in our history, it was an actual defense of our homeland. I say that because except for that war, there has been no concerted invasion of the United States since. Now, two gigantic moats called the Atlantic and the Pacific helped us a great deal. However, if we were to turn tables and ask, how many nations has the United States invaded? I better take a deep breath. Mexico, Nicaragua, China, Korea, Samoa, Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Russia, Algeria, Germany, Italy, France, Japan, Congo, Vietnam, Zaire, Lebanon, Grenada, Panama, Kuwait, Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and those are just the easy ones, indisputable ones. Now, to be fair, each was understood at the time to be in our national interest, though history has judged many of them, if not most, to have been truly unnecessary in the sense of being a danger to us. And I did say most, not all. What they endangered more often than not was economic investment, global influence, political power. But each was judged just at the time by those with the authority to make that decision. Now I get to give you a little more of Christopher Hedges. He goes on to write, "War is a drug. Mythmakers, historians, war correspondents, filmmakers, novelists in the state all endow it with qualities it often does possess. Excitement, power, chances to rise above our small stations in life, and a bizarre and fantastic universe that has a grotesque and dark beauty." He's gesturing to the reality that war is attractive in itself as a way to obtain meaning, purpose, glory, power. Robert E. Lee, the general of the Army of Virginia, found this to be true in a shorter remark when he said, "It is well that war is so terrible, otherwise we should grow too fond of it." What he failed to see, what Christopher Hedges does see and wants you to appreciate, is that war cannot be anything but terrible. It cannot be glorious without the terror. It cannot be heroic without the destruction. It cannot be meaningful without death. A fictional character, Colonel Blake of the MASH series, told a heartbroken Captain Pierce that there are rules in war, and rule number one is that men die. That's what war is. The systematic, collective, organized and determined effort to obliterate human beings. The cost of the drug is never evident before a war starts, is it? Just as the addict never gets addicted on purpose, it's for the fun of the drug, not the cost. It is the thrill that allures. To the warrior, it is the thrill of facing death and the knowledge that this is a real fight. To the general, it is the mission and the experience of victory, which feels better than any payout at any payday. To the politician, it is the goal of the war and the added power it gives to those who wage it. But you pay from the first day. Snafus, situation normal, all up. Gremlins infect every piece of hardware. Gremlins were invented during the Second World War to explain why hardware broke down all the time. Clausewitz's famous fog of war rises the moment the first tank moves or the first bomb detonates. Chaos and confusion attend every moment of every conflict. It never goes as expected, always costs more than we plan, and it rarely achieves the ends intended. By one estimate I have read more than once, the United States has been involved in some form of war 93% of the time we have been a country. One other estimate says there's only ever been 26 years since the year zero, if there was one, in which there was no war going on the planet somewhere. Now, I'm not an expert. I just have a computer. You can do this too. But when I look at the preamble to the Constitution and then at our history, and I ask how many wars have been for the common defense, I find very few. 3, 4. That's out of 43 identifiable conflicts, and not counting all the wars with all the native peoples here in the contiguous states. Judging by how many times we have used armed forces to advance our interests, expand our power, and assert our influence, we have been far more engaged in providing a common offense than a common defense. And at a cost that is in some ways incalculable. Oh, we can count some things. 1.35 million soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen, and others dead. 1.45 million wounded. $7 trillion in constant dollars from the revolution to today. $187 billion a year spent serving veterans who are no longer in the service but need our care for the cost that it inflicted upon their lives and their psyches. Uncounted and incalculable are the suffering of the families in the United States who lost sons and daughters, children who lost parents, the physical damage done to cities, farms, nations, and communities, demolished and destroyed. When we look at the cost for just maintaining our military, if it never fired a shot, it costs $600 billion a year, half of the discretionary budget of the United States. The armed forces demolish up to $1 billion a year in ammunition that has expired. To be fair, and I need to be fair because I'm not trying to be one-sided. I am trying to make a point, but not a one-sided point. Almost twice as much money goes to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and we are concerned about how much they take. We should be concerned. We should be just as concerned with the cost of maintaining a military that, by several calculations, is more than the next 8 countries combined. And that includes China, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, and other larger industrial countries. Now, for both good and ill, let's admit we are entangled in this world. We cannot retreat behind the walls of the sea or to our privileged location away from the rest of the globe. Our oceans are no longer moats, and our interests, for 1,000 reasons, can no longer be merely domestic. Turning around and going home is as wrong as going there as often as we have. Having made our own messy bed, we must sleep in it for yet a little while. This is where Hedges comes to my aid again. The poison that is war does not free us from the ethics of responsibility. Let me repeat that so you understand what he's saying, and I think it's valid. The poison of war does not free us from the ethics of responsibility. There are times when we must take this poison, just as a person with cancer accepts chemotherapy to live. We cannot succumb to despair, he says. Force is, and he says, I suspect always will be, part of the human condition. There are times when the forces wielded by one immoral faction must be countered by a faction that, while never itself moral, is perhaps less immoral. He's talking about something we used to call in philosophy and theology classes the just war theory. You'd say no war is ever just, but we can say that when you fight them, isn't it better to be better morally than the person you're fighting? Better, not perfect, just better. That said, we got where we are because war and its drug-like appeal is something to which we as a nation seem altogether too addicted. We're not alone, of course, but let's not. This is a place where we are not an exception. Call it the political version of a performance-enhancing drug. Think about it. War has the appeal that an athlete must feel when they know if they take a little more of this, they'll run a little faster, get a little stronger, that they will achieve victory if they use this more than someone else. Or maybe war is the opiate of nations, the way religion is the opiate of the masses, the thing that gives nations a reason for being when they've forgotten what their nations are for. Sadly, force is still necessary in this world, as Hedges notes, but we can do something that reduces its intoxicating power. We can, and I mean we the people. And the place I believe to start is with that word defense, which means to protect. We need a clearer idea of what we are protecting and how we should do it. Here are some thoughts, not from an expert by any means. But in a democracy, you don't have to be an expert to ask a question. What if we were to restore some national service? I say this not because I wish to equip the army with more soldiers, but because during the Vietnam War, it was young people, in that case young men, who protested it, saying, hey, you're fighting a war that I'm going to die in. I think you should stop. If you and I don't have an actual stake, either as potential soldiers and sailors or as the parents and grandparents of them, they can fight any bloody war they want. Like it or not, national service means that we fight, not they. It is harder for a government to go to war when the people themselves are at stake, not just the volunteers. Yes, we should have other forms of national service. But one of the reasons that we should have conscription is so that we are all exposed to the danger. To prevent deep entanglements by our government, no foreign actions should be approved by mere acts of Congress for months on end. It is time for Congress to say, we declare war, and say so, and not hide it behind appropriations and black ops. It is time for Congress to, forgive me, man up, and if you're going to kill people, say you're going to kill people. You should declare war. And I say that if you declare war, every war should have an additional tax for the cost of running that war, and it should be imposed on each and every one of us, because it is our country at war, not their budget. And if we don't have to pay for it, guess what? They'll just print the money they want while you're not watching. If you don't want a war, we have to be the ones to say so. And if you don't know they're having a war, you won't know it, will you? And as we are, like it or not, a global police force by default these days, maybe we should take the motto of the police and take it seriously as a military nation. You've seen it on all the sides of all those police cars: to serve and protect, not to kill and conquer, but to serve. And sadly, the police sometimes act more like the Army these days. But what if the Army started acting like the police should? And by which I mean, what if we were present in a way to protect the innocent as well as advance our interests? Christopher Hedges made a long list that I won't read of massacres and genocides we could have interrupted if we had the nerve to be there and didn't worry about our national political interests. What if our primary military purpose overseas was to serve and protect people like those living in Aleppo? If we have so many men and women and so many dollars, could they not stand between them and the Syrians? Of course they could. Why don't we? Because it's not in our political interest. And yet, can it not be in our moral interest to be the people who stand between death and destruction? There were times, the Marshall Plan comes to mind, the Berlin airlift, the Kosovo mission, disaster relief in Haiti and Indonesia, forgotten moments when our military saved lives on purpose and did so with beautiful efficiency and extraordinary bravery. Why not do that as our primary mission? Why are we not saving lives rather than simply protecting our national interest? I'm not making formal proposals. I am asking questions. I have no standing as a defense expert. You give me the privilege of the pulpit and can take it away if you dislike it. But standing here as I am right now, I must be, as Isaiah said, and keep the mouth of the Lord in front of me. As the rain soaks the earth and makes it bring forth vegetation, so is the word that issues from my mouth. If you are now outraged at how we provide the common offense, what will you do about it? The prophet's task is to plant seeds of doubt and hope. And that's why I conclude these remarks by referring to earlier words. Yes, we stand on a shore dimly seen. We are looking through mists of a deep struggle that clouds our hearts and minds. Our hopes do in fact blow fitfully, and what we seek goes from half concealed to half disclosed. We deserve the nation we could be. We deserve the nation we could be, not just the one we are, one that is great because it is good, not the other way around, one that catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, no, not a flag, but a star-spangled hope for an America that is still yet to happen. It's out there. We know it, or we wouldn't be here in this land of the free and the home of the brave. We can go there. The question is, will we? I don't know. That's where I stop. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer.